Hello, my name is Bishop Schuerman, Auxiliary Bishop of the Archdiocese of Milwaukee and chaplain to Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. This is the third and final video on Pope Leo XIV's apostolic exhortation, Dilexi Te. Our last video focused on Chapter 3 of this document, which focused on the Church's emphasis on care for the poor throughout the history of the Church. This video will focus on Chapter 4, titled A History That Continues, with an emphasis on the Church's social doctrine, and on Chapter 5, with the title A Constant Challenge, in which Pope Leo envisions a church which sets no limits on love and embraces the poor as brothers and sisters. Chapter 4 of Pope Leo XIV's apostolic exhortation, titled A History That Continues, focuses on Catholic social teaching. Pope Leo writes that the Church's social doctrine is an analysis of Christian revelation in the context of modern social, labor, economic, and cultural issues. In the 19th century, Pope Leo XIII's encyclical letter Rerum Novarum focused on the question of labor, addressing the intolerable conditions of industrial laborers and calling for the establishment of a just social order. Pope John XXIII, in his encyclical Mater et Magistra in 1961, called for global justice, calling on rich countries to assist countries suffering from hunger and poverty. In the second session of the Second Vatican Council, Pope Paul VI echoed his predecessors' concern and stated that the Church looks to the poor, the needy, and the afflicted, the hungry, the suffering, and the imprisoned. That is, she looks to all humanity that suffers and weeps. She is part of them by evangelical right. In a papal audience in 1964, St. Pope Paul VI referred to the poor as representatives of Christ. The Second Vatican Council's pastoral constitution on the Church in the modern world, Gaudium et Spes, spoke about the use of the goods of the earth for the common good. It states, by its nature, private property has a social dimension that is based on the law of the common destination of earthly goods. Whenever the social aspect is forgotten, ownership can often become the object of greed and a source of serious disorder. With St. Pope John Paul II, the Church's relationship with the poor as preferential was consolidated from a doctrinal standpoint. In his encyclical Sollicitudo Rei Socialis, he pointed out that to ignore the plight of those most in need in society would be like the rich man in the parable from Luke's Gospel who pretended not to know the beggar Lazarus at his gate. Pope Benedict XVI's encyclical Charitas in Veritate stated that the more we strive to secure a common good corresponding to the real needs of our neighbors, the more effectively we love them. Pope Benedict called for the establishment of a network of economic institutions guaranteeing that the needs of the poor be met. In his encyclical Dilexi Te, Pope Francis spoke about indifference to the poor as social sin, and he wrote that social sin consolidates a structure of sin within society and is frequently a part of a mindset that considers normal or reasonable what is merely selfishness and indifference. This then gives rise to alienation. Catholic social doctrine rereads the gospel tradition to address social issues in their current context. It is a way for the Church to address the needs of the poor of this world from the perspective of faith. Chapter 5 of Dilexi Te has the title, A Constant Challenge. In Chapter 5 of Pope Leo XIV's apostolic exhortation, Dilexi Te, the Holy Father states that the Church, the body of Christ, experiences the poor as her flesh. He makes it clear that love for the poor is faithful to the heart of God. Christians may never regard the poor as a societal problem. They are family, our own flesh and blood, and we regard each of the poor as one of us. Pope Leo reminds us that Pope Francis, in his encyclical letter Fratelli Tutti, used the example of the Good Samaritan as an instrument for our self-reflection. There are various characters in the story: the victim of the robbers, the priest and the Levite who avoid and ignore the victim's plight, and the Good Samaritan, the foreigner who goes out of his way to treat the victim's wounds, paying an innkeeper to care for him until he returns from his journey. Pope Francis asks, when it comes to the poor and the suffering of this world, which of the characters in the parable of the Good Samaritan do you identify with? His point is that the temptation to simply ignore the needs of the poor is great, and that it requires a heart open to compassion and mercy to act as the Good Samaritan did. Pope Leo goes on to point out that St. John Paul II considered love for the poor as an essential dimension of the Church's tradition. Pope Leo concludes his apostolic exhortation with these words: "A church that sets no limits to love, that knows no enemies to fight, but only men and women to love, is the church that the world needs today." Through your work, your efforts to change unjust social structures, or your simple heartfelt gesture of closeness and support, the poor will come to realize that Jesus' words are addressed personally to each of them. Dilexi Te, I have loved you. Thank you for your attention to these videos on Pope Leo XIV's apostolic exhortation, Dilexi Te. May God bless you in all your efforts to serve the poor and those most in need.